Welcome to Ramble 37, everybody. I know I just made a ramble, but we got a new blog post out, and this is a fucking doozy. I have not even gone into this at all, so pretty excited. This might be a long one. I also have a Sebe cast in like 3 hours, so shit. And I'm running on very little sleep. Anyway, let's just get right into it, I guess. Somebody just comment. Who was it that just commented? This guy, Oats and Squats, just literally said Ramble 37 range meta blog. Yeah. And then I clicked on the website and I saw this. So, shit, let's get into it, I guess. Let me see if I can zoom this up just a little bit more. Okay. Equipment rebalance. Ranged meta. In our last equipment rebalance blog, we discussed splitting the process into 4 releases. The idea is to start out on the simpler rebalancing before moving on to tackle trickier subjects. Let me get something going in the background. I guess I'm gonna cut these. Okay, anyway. Such as changes to the ranged meta separately, giving everything the room it needs to breathe and to be properly considered. In this blog, we're going to take a closer look at those ranged meta changes, covering the current ranged meta, our previous proposal, various top-level concepts for what we would change, what we could change, detailed DPS numbers, our next steps, and a survey to fill you in, or for you to fill in. Okay. Excuse me for any I'm just really tired right now, so I might get some of these things wrong, but hopefully not. Hopefully I read it all pretty much correctly. As a team, we believe a rebalance is clearly needed in order to curb any risk of power creep and to ensure the long-term health of the game. It's vital that we get this right, and we appreciate all of the support we've received so far. A bit of a warning, though, this blog will contain a lot of information, but regardless, we strongly advise reading through all of it before providing any feedback. We also encourage you all to be constructive in your responses. If you're unhappy with an approach, consider offering an alternative suggestion, or let us know which areas in particular need changing and why. This ensures that we're able to action the changes that matter the most to you. All right. We should also note that the solution to the ranged meta won't be found in this blog. We're going to continue working on it, and further down the road, we'll be asking you to fill out a survey that will help shape our actual proposal. Together, we'll be able to find a solution that we can all be happy with. So grab some water, stay hydrated as you traverse the desert of equipment rebalance. Jesus Christ, this is going to be a doozy. Okay. I should really find something else to AFK. But I think we're good. Okay. The current range meta. First, how do things currently stand? It's no secret that the toxic blowpipe is strong. Here's why it's so popular. It's never a bad weapon to use unless a monster is specifically invulnerable to range. You're forced to wear a shield, or you are attacking a creature that the blowpipe cannot reach, such as Zook. It has a very versatile special attack when it hits. It is very obtainable, costing anywhere from as little as 3 mil to 5 mil GP, depending on the market. It's among the fastest attacking weapons in the game, which drastically reduces its overkill potential. This also allows it to scale better than most range items as max hits increase. Okay. The upkeep cost isn't all that high unless using rune dragon darts, and the return on investment only provides marginal increases in damage. It's the only ranged weapon which can compete with the Twisted Bow in terms of DPS output against lots of creatures. The only ranged weapons which outperform the blowpipe in places where range is relevant are Dragon Hunter Crossbow against high defense dragons like Vorkath, Twisted Bow against creatures which have mid to high defense and also a mid to high magic level, Armadillo Crossbow with Ruby enchanted bolts against creatures with exceptionally high hit points such as Zook, Chinchampas, because of the AoE damage. Okay. Even against creatures it would not typically be matched for, the blowpipe will be a reasonably strong choice as long as the defense can be reduced, making it fit to take on tough cookies such as Zarpus, Vorkath, Abyssal Sire, Sodaseg, and even fucking Bandos. Anyway. Or I guess they're comparing it to other ranged weapons, but Twisted Bow. When used against creatures with a high magic level, the Twisted Bow is the strongest range weapon in the game by a large margin. This is because of the unique effect. The higher the target's magic level or magic accuracy, the higher the Twisted Bow's accuracy and damage becomes. It can be used to great effect against creatures including Great Olm, Zilliana, Prime, Hydra, Skotizo, Vasa, challenge mode creatures, Jad, Zook, and Zulrah. And even if it isn't the strongest weapon, the Twisted Bow is still a reasonable choice against creatures such as Cerberus, Sire, KBD, Maiden, Sotoseg, and Zarpus. However, the Twisted Bow is significantly worse than almost any other alternative range weapon if the creature has a low magic level, and is worse than almost every weapon in the game when the creature has no magic level at all. That's true. Have you ever tried to T-bow a goblin? All right. Because the Twisted Bow is a very rare drop from endgame content, it remains relatively exclusive and has held its position as one of the most expensive non-cosmetic items to obtain in the game. Heavy Ballista. The Heavy Ballista sits within the tier 75 ranged weapons alongside the Twisted Bow and Toxic Blowpipe. Even though it is comparable in requirements, it sees next to no use in most PVM scenarios compared to its tier mates because of its slow attack speed. With the Ballista having such a slow attack speed, the potential for overkill becomes a much bigger issue. It is, however, one of the best range KO weapons in PvP due to its high hits and powerful special attack. Crystal Bow. Crystal Bow is an iconic tier 70 range weapon known for having one of the longest attack ranges in the game and not requiring arrows to shoot. It can be used by players on a budget and is great for those that can't afford or yet to unlock the Toxic Blowpipe. It also has some niche uses such as attacking the respiratory systems of the Abyssal Sire. The strength of the Crystal Bow can be enhanced further by equipping a full set of crystal armor. Each armor piece will give a 3% damage boost and 6% accuracy bonus to the bow. If all pieces are worn, the total set is equal to a 15% damage and 30% accuracy boost. This increase in power would suggest its effective strength should be higher than a tier 70 item. However, it isn't that useful because the set bonus require a head slot to be equipped, so it's often replaced by a Slayer helmet for better bonuses in many situations. The set bonus is not strong enough to outdo the Toxic Blowpipe, even in situations where you cannot fight a creature on Slayer task. The armor set takes up a total of 4 worn item or equipment slots, including the bow, limiting its effectiveness where switching gear is favored. The bow and its armor have a steep upkeep cost as they degrade in combat. They can only be recharged with crystal shards. The armor is reasonably expensive, difficult to unlock, and the cost does not necessarily reflect its strength. Standard crossbows. The most commonly used standard crossbows in games are at tier 61 for Rune, tier 64 for Dragon, and tier 70 for Armadillo. There's a very little difference in power between them, and the best tier Armadillo only providing +1 prayer bonus alongside +10 ranged accuracy over Rune and +6 ranged accuracy over Dragon. However, Dragon and Armadillo crossbows are the only crossbows which can fire Dragon bolts and their enchanted variants, which provide a substantial DPS increase over the adamant enchanted bolts used by the Rune crossbow. Crossbows allow a shield to be equipped at the same time, making them a more defensive option, and in some specific encounters, this approach is forced by design. Some examples include taking an anti-fire shield, or a dragon fire ward against dragons such as Vorkath, taking a crystal shield or dragon fire shield into places such as places where defense matters, taking a mirror shield or V shield against creatures such as basilisks and basilisk knights. Okay. Damn, I need some water. This is loaded. With Dragon Bolts equipped, the Armadillo crossbow is the strongest range weapon option against high defense targets with high hit points and a low magic level. It's the second strongest weapon against creatures such as Zook. The Armadillo crossbow also has a special attack that doubles the accuracy of the next attack by 40%. What? The Armadillo crossbow also has a special attack that doubles the accuracy of the next attack. I'm assuming they mean like it's a 40% spec. However, this attack has no effect if the next move triggers the special effect of a bolt. This is a check before accuracy rolls occur. Against the vast majority of creatures, a Toxic Blowpipe will always be better DPS than any crossbow. Carol's crossbow. Carol's crossbow is another tier 70 weapon, though it sees much less use due to its high upkeep cost. As it is part of the barrow set, it degrades during combat, and after 15 hours of use, it will need repairing before it can be used again. In addition to this, the crossbow uses unique ammunition that is consumed with every shot fired. Okay. Other noteworthy points about Carol's crossbow included its higher DPS than a Rune crossbow against low-mid defense targets, unless the Rune crossbow is used with enchanted ruby bolts against creatures with high hit points. A shield cannot be equipped at the same time because it is two-handed. When worn with a full set of Carol the Tainted's armor, shots from the crossbow benefit from a special effect that gives a chance to reduce the agility level of an opposing player by 25%. But this has little to no significance even in PvP combat. When worn with a full set of Carol the Tainted, why did you just say Carol's armor? And an Amulet of a Dam, there is also a 25% chance for each attack to deal a second hit for half damage of the first. This set effect does provide a slight DPS increase that can find uses in PvP for certain players, but it does require 5 items to be worn, all of which will degrade over time. Magic bows. The magic shortbow and magic longbow are tier 50 range weapons, though longbows are mostly considered irrelevant due to their slow attack speed. However, this doesn't outweigh the benefits of having an increased attack distance. Magic shortbows can have comparable DPS to a rune crossbow depending on the defense of the creature and the quality of the ammunition used, but a shield cannot be equipped at the same time as they are two-handed weapons. Even when using amethyst arrows, the magic shortbow is weaker than the Carol's crossbow. However, the cost of upkeep is severely reduced as it doesn't degrade, and any ammunition used benefits from the ammunition saving effect of Ava's devices. Okay. The magic shortbow can be imbued, increasing its base range accuracy from 69 to 75 and lowering the special attack energy used from 55 to 50. But imbued or not, you're always better off using a rune crossbow against targets with high enough hit points to take full advantage of the Ruby Bolt spec attacks. Room for growth. The tier 70 range meta has a lot of options with plenty of ways for lower tier items to be improved, increasing the available variety. However, the tier 75 range meta only has 4 options. Twisted Bow, Toxic Blowpipe for everything else, Armadillo Crossbow for a few occasions where Toxic Blowpipe isn't the right choice, Crystal Bow with Crystal Armor, and yeah, those are basically the 4. The solution to the current meta isn't as simple as just introducing more ranged items at tier 75 either. Simply put, the Toxic Blowpipe is just too strong everywhere it is used. Its damage-tick ratio, see further down below for more info, is too high for where it sits. This leaves us with the following options. Okay. Just trying to be somewhat efficient in game. Just cutting my gems. Okay. Nerf the Toxic Blowpipe so we can introduce more ranged items at tier 75 that will fill in places where the Toxic Blowpipe was previously used and might be even better in some circumstances. Create a new tier above the Toxic Blowpipe. This would unavoidably result in power creep for what one is one of the most dominant playing styles. What? Okay. Our previous proposal. What was it? These are the changes we had suggested for the charged Toxic Blowpipe. 100% increased accuracy added to the special attack. Toxic Blowpipe base range accuracy reduced from 60 to 30. Strength reduced from 40 to 25. All darts variants accuracy and strength reduced. We've already seen this for those that read the previous blog. Range level requirement increased from 75 to 78. The intention was to make dart choice more important, with cheaper ones being notably weaker than the more expensive ones. In addition to reducing the base stats of a Toxic Blowpipe, this would bring its overall power more in line with what we consider to be a tier 75-78 ranged weapon. Space would have been created for new items in the tier 75 to 78 bracket, leading to increased diversity of options for the ranged combat. These changes would also have helped to overcome balancing hurdle we face currently when designing new PVM content. The Toxic Blowpipe would have a new identity as the best range weapon to use against low defense targets. We then looked to offset the nerf to the Toxic Blowpipe by increasing the damage and accuracy bonus of Crystal Armor effect. Unfortunately, our previously proposed buffs weren't enough to make a sufficient difference and failed to bridge the gap that would have been left behind. You can find the original details here. Okay. What worked? Darts become a more important factor, emphasizing that higher DPS should be appropriate at a higher cost. It created a larger gap between the Toxic Blowpipe and the Twisted Bow, allowing us to fill that space over time with future rewards. It created space for diversity in the range meta and made existing items better in various situations. Gave the Toxic Blowpipe a clear identity, the best weapon against low defense targets. What didn't work? Oh god. The power level between those who owned a Twisted Bow and those who didn't was widened considerably, resulting in players feeling like more content would be locked behind an incredibly expensive item. Despite its identity as the best weapon against low defense targets, Toxic Blowpipe would still be the best weapon against medium defense targets too, unless they were specifically susceptible to the Twisted Bow. With the power level of the Toxic Blowpipe being balanced more around Rune and Dragon Darts, players with Limited access to these darts, especially those playing an Iron account, felt like the nerf impacted them more than others. While the range meta changed, it didn't really change by enough to make a noticeable immediate impact, especially towards endgame content. It still mostly revolved around using either a Toxic Blowpipe or the Twisted Bow, and the Twisted Bow, the Toxic Blowpipe just being weaker than it was before. This went against our goal of increasing diversity in the viable range weapons and relied too heavily on the new items being added in the future. The changes essentially nerfed the player rather than the weapon, as there were no immediate replacements for the Toxic Blowpipe, with no publicly available schedule for releases of new items that undermined players' confidence in these changes. That is true. Good fucking points so far. Many felt like those who had used the Toxic Blowpipe pre-nerf had achieved things more easily than players attempting the same tasks post-nerf. Even after buffing the Crystal Armor, the Crystal Bow would remain uncompetitive. After testing various stat changes, we determined that we'd have to increase the set bonus accuracy and damage to 40% accuracy and 50% damage for the Crystal Bow to be better against Ketzek and the Inferno. That's quite a substantial increase than our proposal, and something we were not comfortable doing given the Crystal Bow is still a tier 70 item. Yeah, that would be fucked. I'm sorry, that would be fucked. Anything that gives insane percent damage is really bad for the game because it just scales crazily when new strength armor and shit is added. The Crystal Armor was still less viable against creatures where getting a Slayer task is possible. Is this really needed? The game has been just fine for the last 6 years with the Toxic Blowpipe in its current form, so why change it now? Does it even need to be changed at all? No, it doesn't. There's almost certainly a scenario where the Toxic Blowpipe could remain in game just the same. However, we'd be left in a situation where adding new range gear from future pieces of content would result in a blatant power creep. The gap between melee, magic, and one range item would continue to grow. We believe that making changes now is the best interest for the long-term health of the game. We still want the Toxic Blowpipe to remain viable, but for it to be a tool in the arsenal rather than the entire army. That's cool. Top-level concepts. Since first suggesting equipment rebalancing, we've received an overwhelming amount of feedback. We've listened to it all, and here are some of your suggestions. Oh, God. Fuck. I've been talking too much today. Okay. Range damage types. One popular suggestion was to separate ranged accuracy and strength into different styles, similar to how melee works with stab, slash, and crush. Our internal discussions proposed piercing, bludgeoning, magic, special. This is a really cool concept. I actually like this a lot. A change like this would definitely help to fix the issue with diversity in ranged equipment, although it's arguably a bit extreme considering the issue only really exists because of one ranged weapon. Implementing the fundamentals of this would require an incredibly large amount of dev work. First, we'd need to completely rewrite almost all existing NPCs' defensive stats and respective ranged weapon offensive stats. Then a similar amount of time would be needed to calculate the shift in DPS values for each ranged weapon to ensure each one was correctly balanced. With something of this scale, it's likely a lot of existing metas would change, potentially for the worse, and the reality is that no matter how much time we spent balancing things internally, it would take several iterations to get right. This would have huge implications on the work done for combat achievements and potentially delay the project even further. It's also a huge shift in how ranged combat works across old school and might not be a universally accepted direction for the game to take. This level of change needs serious thought and isn't something we would approach without first fully investigating alternative options. It is a really cool option, honestly. It would take a fucking ton of work, but that is a very, very cool concept, and I think it would actually be very healthy for the game if it was done right. It would take a lot of time, though. Special boss mechanics. Another suggestion was to introduce unique mechanics for bosses and creatures that would limit the effectiveness of the Toxic Blowpipe against them. This is something we've done in the past and continue to keep in mind new content releases. For example, Basilisk Knights require a shield, and Zook is intentionally placed out of the range for the Blowpipe. Alternate ways of achieving this would involve mechanics such as damage reflection, making the use of a fast attacking weapons much more punishing, mechanics that require the player to move around a lot so there are fewer opportunities to attack, drastically increasing the ranged defense of bosses, and creatures to combat the Toxic Blowpipe. However, Jesus Christ. This would, however, impact the viability of melee. Increasing the range defense makes all ranged weapons weaker, not just the Toxic Blowpipe. Landing special attacks with the Dragon Warhammer still has the potential to undo any high defense stats we apply unless we specifically limit the amount of defense that can be reduced, like we have at Soda Seg. Arbitrary. Don't like it. Ultimately, we still feel like these solutions don't fix the underlying problem. Whilst we're able to design new content with the current Blowpipe in mind, all existing content would remain susceptible to power creep as when new range items become available. There's also the potential for any changes having an unintended negative impact on other weapons. Okay. What fucking world am I on? Jesus Christ, lagging so much. One of the most common concerns... Okay, so rebalancing old content. One of the most common concerns was that the existing content would become much harder, or that some PVM goals would take longer to achieve. For example, Lizardman Shamans would be impacted significantly due to the low range accuracy of the Shazian armor, which is required to fight them effectively. The Inferno would become slightly harder if the Blowpipe is dealing less damage and monsters are taking longer to die. That would be a problem when reaching Zook, as taking down the blah 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 quickly is very beneficial. Okay. Yeah, we get that. Vasa Mysterio becomes even more reliant on having fellow raiders with a twisted bow, especially in challenge mode. It was suggested that we could reduce the stats of affected creatures accordingly, but again, applying this kind of change across the entire game is something we'd like to avoid. However, we could certainly look case by case and adjust bosses and creatures where necessary. Why don't we just ban the bots? God. The Toxic Blowpipe is only a problem because it's cheap. It's only cheap because Jaggers haven't banned bots, gold farmers. It's not our fault. We should have to suffer because of this. Jesus, dude. Okay. Whilst the affordability and upkeep costs of Toxic Blowpipe are an issue, they're only contributing to the bigger problem of how crazy powerful the weapon is. By just making it more expensive to purchase and use, we'd still face the following snags. A single tier 75, 78 weapon being the meta, continued issues with power creep whenever range strength is introduced, dart scaling issues. Yeah, okay, we get it. We don't disagree that Toxic Blowpipe is cheaper than we'd like. And yes, that is partially due to the amount of them available because of accounts farming Zora. We asked our anti-cheating team to provide some insight into the situation. We have multiple bot watch heuristics, specifically looking at bosses such as Zora. These are frequently updated to remain as accurate and informative as possible. However, with the vast amount of scripts and bots out there, we simply can't catch every one of them all the time. This is an ongoing battle between the anti-cheating team and people abusing our system. The number of botted accounts that the team removes on a weekly basis fluctuates, but it is usually in the low thousands. A lot of these accounts are played manually just as a normal player would do, but their intention is purely around gold farming. This is an issue because players seek to make a living from converting in-game items to real-world currencies. So long as our game provide these players with a real-world financial incentive to play, then they'll do so at all costs. These type of accounts aren't easily identifiable via bot watch. They require a mixture of data, analysis, profiling, and manual tracking. Over the last year, the team has been working to improve our arsenal with new talent, fresh ideas, and innovative ways of working. One example we can give is the implementation of machine learning models and analysis to help flag any suspicious accounts for manual review. We're happy to report early success with this, though these additional analysis methods we're seeing now on average 600 to 2,500 additional real-world trading bans applied daily. We're aware there's much more work to do, and we can be doing better. Over the coming months, we are actively going to be working on developing new systems to aid and fight against cheating in our games. We can't go into detail about these new systems for obvious reasons, but alongside hiring more staff, it's our main focus of the team's planning and strategy over the past year. Okay, damage per tick. Accuracy is our friend. One of the fundamental issues with the Toxic Blowpipe is potential damage output is far higher than its competition. By working out the raw potential damage output of an item, we can focus purely on figures when comparing them. We don't need to worry about various different stats. If a weapon is one-handed or two-handed, or things like attack range, in the simplest form, our calculations take a weapon's max hit and attack speed and then output a simple figure that we can refer to. The below table is based on the following. Okay. Yeah, so it's a little big fucking chart. I'm not even going to go into it. But, yeah, you guys can look at it from here, or I'll have this blog linked in the description if you want to read it alongside me. Accuracy matters, so why are we ignoring it? Accuracy is a very important metric in old school combat. It controls how often you're going to hit with a weapon, which directly impacts the amount of damage you can output over over a period of time. As the monster's defense value increases, accuracy against the same creature decreases, and therefore the overall DPS typically goes down. However, accuracy is not a very reliable stat, especially given how a lot of existing encounters involve using defense-reducing special attacks to get as close to 100% accuracy as possible. So in general, this is a good way to show the potential power level of items. You can clearly see from the table above just how far ahead the Toxic Blowpipe is against defense targets. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so more graphs. You guys can check this out if you want to. Anyway, moving forward, if you're still with us after all this information, then very well done. You most certainly command the power of armies and could probably punch a horse to the ground, which is why we need your help. Jesus, dude. Oh, God. All this shit. Okay, whatever. We've read it. Hopefully, if you guys have even been listening to this ramble so far, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. At least they've been very transparent with what they've seen so far from the community. We've been working on a new proposal for the range portion of equipment balancing, but before we share that, we'd really appreciate some additional guidance from you all. We've created a survey about the range meta and how we might proceed. Please help us by clicking here. Some of the questions in the survey should give us some insight into our current thinking. While we will not be polling all of these changes, we do want you as a community to help us shape a healthy range meta that will keep us happily playing for years to come. Once you've processed your feedback from both this post and the survey, we'll come back to you with some more proposals. We expect that there will be several rounds of feedback required, so don't worry, we won't rush this. As combat achievements is close to completion, it's important we make these changes soon and that we get them right. We'd like to give ourselves an opportunity to evaluate any immediate changes to the meta too. So this time has been factored in. As always, thank you for continued support, and we'll see you next blog with our shiny new ranged meta proposal. Okay. God damn it. I am fucking exhausted. 27 minutes of reading that shit. Okay, so I'll just give a few thoughts before I kind of end. I do think that the ranged meta is pretty fucked right now, and I do agree that Toxic Blowpipe needs to be nerfed. And I am against, I'll just give a few points, I guess. I'm against items that give percent damage and percent accuracy and shit, because it just gets worse and worse over time. You see it with the Arclight. Arclight is disgustingly overpowered. Same with the Dragon Hunter Crossbow. It's really overpowered. It's because of these percentages. So, for example, like a lance has a 20% damage and accuracy increase. So anytime a new armor's come, like if a new bandos came out that had like double the strength bonus, it will whatever that damage bonus is, it's an additional 20% to the lance over every other weapon. So, for example, if a rapier and a lance are very close right now, that gap is just going to increase. So the rapier doesn't compete, and the lance just gets more and more disgustingly OP. It's same with the Arclight. Arclight's even worse because the Arclight's a 70% increase, which is just going to be horrendous in the next few years when new armor gets released. Anyway, not a big fan of that. I really love their idea of different ranged types, damage types. This piercing, bludgeoning, and magical and special. I really like that. I think that's a really cool thing, and I know it would take a lot of work, but I think it would be really cool. Big fan. But yeah, let me know, guys. Anyway, there's a lot more I could talk about, but we'll wait until the actual blog comes out about what they're planning to change. I'm gonna go to this link right here and tell them a little bit of what I think. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think. And what your thoughts are on this, what you would like to see, and we can have maybe a little bit of a discussion in the comments. But yeah, I look forward to what they propose in the coming weeks. So anyway, I'll see you guys for the Sebe cast later today, and I'm gonna go get some sleep right now. Just take a little nap. Anyway, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.